Hello, this is Jennifer Simonetti-Bryan, Master of Wine here at the Weekly Tasting, and this week we are looking deep into the eyes of the king and queen of Italian reds, Barolo and Barbaresco. These are pretty intense wines. These are really big, rich wines, and if wine had a extreme sport category, I think Nebbiolo would win the gold medal, because Nebbiolo, even though it's a thin-skinned grape, it's got intense structure. So it's got very strong tannin, so bitterness. It can have a big grip on your palate. It can be very drying for some people. It's got intense acidity. It's really high in acidity, and it has high alcohol. It generally is 14.5 plus, but it also has intense flavor as well. So the only thing it's kind of, going a step back on is color. So if you pour these wines out and you look at the pale color thinking it's going to be a wimpy wine, guess again. So if I had to tell you about Nebbiolo, in terms of maybe some wines that you know, like, so Pinot Noir, it's more of that skim milk end of the spectrum with red fruit and high acidity, but it's low in bitterness. And then you've got Cab, which is at the heavy cream end of the spectrum, and it's rich and big and bold, and it's got some very gripping tannin. Well, Nebbiolo's got a bit of both. It's kind of like the best of both worlds, except it just doesn't have the intense color. So it's got the red fruit that you see in Pinot Noir, so beautiful strawberry and cherry, red cherry flavors. You don't see a whole lot of black fruit in Barolo and Barbaresco in general, but you have some unique flavors in Nebbiolo, particularly tea leaf. I always get tea leaves, so there's not herbaceousness as in herbs, but very soft, like black tea, like English breakfast tea. And also it's got a floral character that it's known for, so go smell some rose petals or something along those lines and then smell this wine, and you'll be able to pick up that floral character. And that's what it's known for: tea leaves, rose petals, and it's also known for an intense spice as well. But not only does it come from the grape, but also from the intense amount of aging that these wines can have in barrel. Now, these come from Piemonte within Italy, and the region itself is extremely hilly. And I don't know, why is that important? It's important because Nebbiolo is the first grape to see bud break. So in the winter, after it comes out of its hibernation sleep, it's the first to see little buds on the vine. And it's also the last to be picked in general. So it needs a really long growing season, and you generally see Nebbiolo on southern or warm slopes within this hilly region. And why that's important is because of the great drainage that you have. If it's landlocked or if it's locked in this area, or you got some more water pooling in an area, then it's going to soak up some of that water and dilute things, and it's not going to be as rich and as powerful as it can be, and it also delays ripening. So that's why they plant it on hillside. So this is a hillside grape, and a lot of times some of the best crus or vineyards you see are the south-facing slopes, because those are generally a bit warmer, so south or southwest, because the setting sun tends to be a bit warmer and warm through the rest of the day. Okay, so the first wine we have is Barolo 2013. Both of these are 2013, and what is great about this is you want to compare and contrast two different terroirs that are the same vintage. That's usually the best. I mean, it's the best to have them both made by the same producer, but not all producers make both. You generally see one that really focuses on Barolo or one really focuses on Barbaresco. So this first one, the Barolo, and in the nose you get some really ripe red cherry flavors, and you can smell some of that perfume, tea leaf, rose petal, but you get a lot of fruit, and it does have a fair amount of oak on this as well. And you can tell that it's been aged for a period of time. As a wine ages, and ages in barrel, ages even in bottle, as oxygen gets to it, It decreases in color. It goes from a bright ruby red to more of a orangish, and then finally to a tawny color. But it increases in spiciness and in earthiness. Now, the region of Piemonte itself, in terms of its food pairing, Piemonte for food is known for very rich foods and pastas and dishes, like and including truffles, and it's known for white truffles, and so it's got a lot of rich earthiness to it, more than you see the rest of Italy. And so they go extremely well with these wines, but what you notice here for Barolo is its structure. It's powerful. You're going to want to take a couple of sips of this to acclimate your palate first, because it's pretty intense. And also, the alcohol on this is high. Now, what you don't want to do in food pairing, what you don't want to do is pair this or the Barbaresco, either of these wines, with something that's spicy hot, like Mexican food or a hot Thai curry spice or something like that. You don't want to do that. Why? Well, it's because it'll make the alcohol stand out, and the high alcohol of these wines is going to make the spice nuclear. So if you like nuclear spice on your food, then maybe you want to try it. But in general, you don't want to do it because it'll absolutely clash. So make sure that you get some red meat in here, because the protein, or some cheese, the protein from that is going to soften some of those tannins that you have here for this wine, but it's going to retain some of that fruitiness. And that acidity also makes it really fantastic to cut through some fats, whether it's prime rib or you want, filet mignon doesn't have that much fat on it, but if you have certain steaks, you're gonna see that marbleization, the acid in this is gonna cut right through all of that. The second wine we have is Barbaresco, the queen. Barolo is the king, Barbaresco is the queen. And the reason why I put the Barolo first is so that you could get that, big, bold wine out of the way, and then it feels like falling into a pillow for the Barbaresco, and you'll see what I mean. Even on the nose, it's much more intense in terms of its fragrance. And one of the things about Barolo is a bit higher in elevation, so that's why you're getting also some more intense richness and concentration. Barbaresco is lower in elevation, and it's closer to the river, and more of Barbaresco is close to the river than Barolo, which has a moderating effect on the region, so it moderates everything, so it's not as strong in its structure. So that's why we say it has more of a feminine character, because of the perfume and its softer edges. But this is not a weak wine. This is not, I always think of Angelina Jolie from Tomb Raider, yes, elegance, absolutely, and she's gorgeous. Let's hey, she's beautiful, but very strong and powerful. So that's kind of my version of trying to make an analogy for you there. Hopefully you like that. But Barbaresco is also high in acidity. It's lighter in body than Barolo, but it does have softer edges. It's more velvety in its tannin. It doesn't have that grip that Barolo does. And in terms of food and wine pairing, yeah, you can totally pair this with braised short ribs, just like you would with Barolo, or maybe even a brisket or something like that. But for our vegan friends out there, you may want to try portobello mushroom burgers or something like that. And like I said, the region is known for truffles, so you may want to try a rich pasta dish with some white truffle oil on that, and that would be fabulous. Well, one word on decanting and another word on aging. These wines probably would benefit from decanting, and what I mean by that is not because it's got huge amount of sediment or brown sludge in the bottom. It's because they will benefit from the oxygen, just pouring it into a decanter and allowing the oxygen to go through it. It will open up even more. I've had Barolos where it's been in the decanter for a few hours, and it just continues to open up more and more of its complexities and layers of flavors, and sometimes it gets a meatiness to it, and more layers of spice and earthiness and stuff like that. So it's a wonderful exploration if you want to try it out. I've done experiments where I've decanted wines, and at the 15-minute mark, I taste it and I write some notes, and then at the half-hour mark, and then at the hour mark. It's a great way to spend an evening with friends to be able to do that. Just make sure you've got enough wine there that lasts in the decanter. Also, in terms of aging, like I said, these wines age for a really long period of time. There are some people who will not touch Barolo or Barbaresco under 10 years, so having 2013 is sacrilegious for some people. I like tasting a little bit of fruit in my wine, so for me, I like tasting some of that red fruit, and I'm willing to put up with some of those tannins in there, that grip that you got. I'll just put it with some, with a steak with some protein, and it'll soften it right up. But also time in the decanter will help with that. But the longer you age it, the more years it has, that fruit's going to go back. The tannins are also going to soften, which is the reason why you see the brown sludge in the bottom. It's going to grow in its earthiness and its spiciness. But if you don't like it that way, just drink it earlier. But by all means, you can keep this till this Christmas, next Christmas, following Christmas, or whatever years you want. Like I said, 30 years, you can age this wine if you would like. That's it for me for this week. I hope you enjoy these wines as much as I did, and until next time, cheers.